Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to meet and catch up with amazing human beings to talk about their journey with mental health. Today, I'm so happy to welcome Alex to this conversation. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks. Hi, Matt.
Hi there. So as I always do, I'm just going to introduce Alex as I know her, or as I've been introduced to her. And then, Alex, I'll ask you to give a proper introduction as to who you are and what you do, if that's okay. So Alex and I have connected through social media, as I do with many people, and Alex and I connected on LinkedIn, just loving what she's doing, the work she's doing, especially now in the mental health space, which is something, of course, that I'm passionate about. And as you're going to see, Alex is a very driven young lady who is very passionate about this subject. She's really trying to make a difference, and I love that to pieces. So Alex, you can do the proper introduction, but pleasure to meet you, pleasure to see you on this conversation.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm also known as Authentic Alex. It's the kind of hashtag that I blog under on LinkedIn. I have, for the past 5 years, been blogging about mental health on LinkedIn, back when it probably wasn't as cool to write about it, and there were very few voices around. It started off when I was in the corporate world, and now I run my own business. So I primarily help people find purpose or sense of purpose, tell their story and grow their presence on LinkedIn. And it's what I've been doing for the past almost 4 years since I left my corporate job.
Wow, amazing. So we're going to delve into a lot of that. We're going to go through some of those conversations, of course. So the big question we always ask, and please do bring into this your career as well, because I know you've had some changes and transitions within there as well. Your life journey with mental health. What's happened? Tell us as much of the story as you want to.
Yeah, sure. I would say that I guess my journey feels like it starts in my childhood. When I was about 11 or 12, I transferred from, primary school to secondary school. So in the UK, obviously, you either have a school that has both. In mine, I just had primary school, so I had to find a new secondary school. And it happened to be that something that happens every year in England, and it gets publicized for 2-3 days and then it disappears, is that there's always too many kids for the amount of school places. And I was one of those kids that slipped through the net and didn't get a school place. And so my mum at the time had sent me to France to stay with some family friends, where I decided to do like a summer camp and spent some time with, for 3 months learning French and doing all these kind of fun sporty things. And when she came to pick me up, she said to me, I'm afraid we didn't get you a secondary school. And I was, 10 and 11, like, what do you really say to that? And the woman that was looking after me said, well, why don't you consider enrolling her in the school where she did the summer camp? And my mum thought, well, that's an option. So we went to the school. And at this time, I spoke not one word of French. And the head teacher said, we're not a big fan of the idea because she doesn't speak French, and she would need to in order to understand what's going on in the classroom. At this point, it was to go into year 7. And she said, if in 3 months she doesn't speak French, then I'll pull her out, but at least give her a chance. And they did. So all of a sudden, I was enrolled into a French school at 11, not speaking a word of French. And unfortunately, my mum was finding it really hard to live with me. So I ended up staying with this family for for the first few months, because they didn't plan to kind of look after me that long. So I think that was sort of, I guess, the first, now that I'm saying it out loud, was the first sort of, I guess, kind of trauma in a way, because I sort of just got dropped in this country with people I didn't really know that well, speaking a language that I didn't, feeling probably quite abandoned by the fact that my mother's just left me, and my brother wasn't there. And I sort of just got on with it. Within 3 months, I somehow sponged and picked up French, and I was speaking fluent French. And I then got told that I couldn't stay with the family I was in. So I then got passed on to another family, which was terrible. And then I got passed on to a third one, which was living with the receptionist of the school. And so for a year, I kind of, vagabonded a bit through different French families, learnt French. And I would say it was probably one of the best and worst years of my life because, it made me hugely independent. It made me grow. I think I kind of gained 5 years in age. I was 15 mentally from that experience. And I don't think I've ever lost that kind of mental gap. And then I came back to London, and this is where things kind of go a little bit downhill. Is that my mum found me a place in a school. It was in a very rough neighborhood of London, but it was a school. So, it was better than staying in Paris, separated from my family. And I joined the school, and very quickly I stood out for the wrong reasons. I was very hardworking. I was very gave it my all. I stood out as a teacher's pet that did me no favors. I was an introvert, so I found it really hard to kind of approach people, to kind of create friendships and whatnot. And I got bullied really, really, really badly, to the point that my life was frequently in danger. I almost got beat up once. I almost got stabbed once. So it was a very traumatic, return home. I eventually, the school wasn't, they weren't quite sure if it was me or if it was them. And I then got put, they called it a shadow. So someone that followed me everywhere to see what was going on. And I once almost got beat, and the person that was shadowing me was like, you have to pull her out, for her own safety. Pardon. And at that point I had huge amount, this was when I started having suicidal ideation, because I just could not hack it. I was constantly crying, constantly hiding in loos, constantly in teachers' rooms to kind of, protect myself. And just this fear, constant living in fear and panic and dread that something would happen to me. At the time I was journaling, and this was interesting because this then ties, into what I do now, but writing kind of saved my life in a way, because actually I was writing a lot of my suicidal thoughts in a diary, and my mum found it, obviously panicked, and sent me to the doctors, and he then, asked her to leave and said, what's going on? I then sort of kind of told him everything, because I was constantly sick, physically sick because of all the stress. And then he was like, yeah, you've got to pull her out. And this was at a period where, as luck would have it, the law came into place that if your kids weren't in school, your parents could be taken to court and end up in jail. So I got pulled out, and then we got letters saying, if your daughter's not back in school, we're taking you to court and you may end up in jail. So it's sort of like my mum goes to jail or I go to my jail, what's the better option? So it was all a very traumatic experience that stayed with me for a very long time. I think, as an adult, I hid a lot of what made me me, because that made me suffer a lot when I was younger. And it took a very long time to be able to heal that and to show up as myself. And that's a big reason why authenticity is such a big thing for me. It's because I had to, hide a lot of that for my own protection. And that was sort of the first big experience. It then happened, the next kind of big thing was being in the corporate world and having everything sort of crash and burn.
Welcome. Yeah.
Yes. And a very familiar, I've obviously listened to your story, Matt, but a very familiar story. So, I came from quite humble beginnings and had this huge idea that when I'm 30, I'm going to work in the city, have nice designer clothes, lots of money in the bank and whatnot. And I got that by 24. I was offered the position of head of training and development for a foreign exchange firm. And I was in the leadership position by the time I was 24. And I thought, okay, this is what I've been working for most of my early, 18 to 20 something. And I got it, and it just didn't feel right. It felt unsettling. It felt like something was missing. And so I kind of went on this quest of if this isn't the life I want, what is? And realizing that actually a lot of this was not my dream. It was, a dream instilled of me through my family and my culture. And so I ended up kind of having, to put it blankly, a breakdown, a quarter life crisis, an existential crisis. And I was just getting constantly burnt out at work, just deeply unsatisfied with the life that I had. I'd gone through like quite a lot of like a period of heavy drinking and partying, the sort of years before that as well, numbing the pain of, you know, being not happy with the life I had, and obviously not dealing and healing, you know, a lot of the childhood stuff. And then I through the pestering of a colleague who kept on saying, you should go to therapy, or you should try therapy, because he could see the turmoil that I was dealing with. I eventually went after 3 months of gentle nudging. And that was, I would say, the beginning of the end of me kind of getting through that, you know, years and years of things that had built up and I hadn't dealt with. You know, I'm half Colombian, and I was raised in a culture that doesn't really believe in depression and mental health and stuff like that. So the idea of going to therapy, or even seeking help, or even acknowledging that that's a thing, was a really big hurdle and obstacle for me to kind of overcome. And so I just thought, you know, a really kind of key moment in my mental health journey, I remember, was I was in, obviously, kind of in a human resources type role, and People Management, which is the HR management magazine in the UK, had done a campaign on HR professionals that were basically sharing their story about different mental health challenges. And at the time, I was in such a bad place, but it gave me so much hope and inspiration that one day, you know, I'll be on the other side, and one day I might even share my story. And, you know, a year later, I would say, I ended up starting to want to share my story and being inspired by those, you know, those people's whose stories I read. Colin Minto was one of them that was in the magazine. Josh Quigley was doing a lot of content on LinkedIn around his mental health journey. And I thought, you know, I want to also do this, because those, in a way, those stories saved me as well. You know, they gave me that hope and light at the end of the tunnel. And in, I would say, less than that, 2016, I started writing about kind of more mental health content on LinkedIn, having written previously about, you know, graduates and student and professional development. And people started resonating with what I was saying, and it was really kind of hitting home. I, after a while, decided to quit my job. I wrote a post on LinkedIn that talked about, you know, being a little girl and dreaming of working in the really tall building with a pointy top by the river, and having reached the 45th floor, realized that my definition of success was wrong. It was based on money, power, and status. But what we never talk about are things like that come with it, that are like depression, stress, anxiety. But sometimes it takes getting to where you want to be to realize it's not where you're meant to be. And that post went viral, and it was really, that was on the day I left my job. And it was really kind of what, I guess, opened up a new chapter for me, whereby I just thought, you know, I need to continue speaking about this because people are interested. But I realized a lot of people weren't willing to be the first to talk about it. And I thought, if I have the courage and bravery to go first, maybe that might start conversations that really need to be happening in the city around the realities of, you know, life in the city and having a career in the corporate world. And I got named LinkedIn Top Voice for the UK the year that I left my corporate job, and the year after, around the content that I'd been creating around mental health and my own journey. And it just spurred me on to continue wanting to do that. And then, you know, life happens, another trauma arrives. And so 2019, I had a miscarriage, which was my first experience of being pregnant and having a miscarriage. And that was very, very traumatizing. And I decided to document kind of the process. And what I mean by that is, and I rarely do this, I've almost never done this, I always process my trauma and then I write or create content. Whereas in this case, I felt really compelled to create content in the moment. And so I videoed myself on my birthday, which was just maybe 2-3 months after I miscarried, or less than that, 2 months before I miscarried after. And I talked about what the experience was like and how I felt very lonely because it was such a stigma. I had no idea, because I've never experienced it, how stigmatized an issue it was. And I thought, you know, if I'm experiencing this, so many people and women in the city and in corporate jobs must experience this. And I had the luxury of working for myself and saying, I'm going to take 2 months off and not, and recover physically and emotionally. And so I talked about it, and it was one of my most viewed videos. 150,000 people watched it. And I thought, okay, these are the conversations we need to be having. And then I decided to go to therapy again for the third time in December of 2019. And I started a newsletter called From Trauma to Triumph, with the wild idea, as I usually have, to document what I was learning in therapy and kind of getting, letting people in and, be a fly on the wall and see what's talked about, what's learned, and whatnot. And I did it not for any other reason than just being, it being a cathartic process for me. And, a year on, there's almost 26,000 subscribers, and it's something that I'm deeply passionate about and something that I really want to continue pouring my energy into. That's a much longer version of my story that I was planning to say.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Authentically, Alex, thank you for being authentic. It's incredible. It really is. And I feel so proud of you in that journey of where you've been and what you've been through, and the fact that you're so open and honest about it is such a refreshing thing, of course. And that's what, for me, this podcast is all about, the opportunity just to, for lots of people who might not know you, and I'm sure lots of people will know you that will listen to this already, it's that insight into the world of the other person. It's recognizing that there's been some experiences in their lives that have driven them, or has been one of the reasons why they're passionate about certain things. And I love that. And I think your journey is just fascinating, and it's not a finished blog yet, right? It's a blog in progress that's continuing.
No,
constantly
it's never a finished blog or a finished life.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I just find it really fascinating, and everything you said totally resonates with the city experience, the role, the idea of this big tower, and the thoughts of climbing that tower. And there's so many people, I'm sure, listening to this who are living that experience right now, just wondering, is it all worth it, and why am I doing it? And I think it's just asking people to really think about what's important. I don't know about you, but this current pandemic has created some realizations of what's important to people.
I mean, definitely, it's such a crap situation, but there's a part of me that's so grateful for it, because I feel like people are being forced to sit with their thoughts. And, obviously that can also be dangerous. However, it can also be an opportunity, for people to reflect on their lives and their careers and go, is this really, what I want to be doing with my life? Even me, like I've concentrated on, where do I want to spend my time in my business? And that made me relocate to Berlin. So, I think that if we take the opportunity and see it as an opportunity and change that perspective of, a bad situation, we can find some good in it. And I mean, this is a knack that I have where, a lot of shit has happened in my life, to be frank, and I found a way to kind of spin it in a way that makes me really kind of realize that these opportunities of kind of shitness can be turned into gold in a way.
Yeah, and that ability, I find it fascinating, the ability to spin something bad into a positive, and I talk a lot about positive mindset and having the ability to sort of reframe things, and sort of like the CBT model in many ways of sort of looking at the world. And I still struggle, I still have my problems, but I also look at them and go, well, thank God that happened. When I lost my job in 2016, it was the worst, best thing that ever happened to me, and I can reflect on that. I think it's such a critical point of everything we're doing is, we only get bombarded with negative news. Isn't it nice when we get something that's positive, even when it's a bad situation, but positive information and stories around that? So keep telling the stories. Oh, FaceTime. Sorry. That's all right. No, nothing happened for anybody that's listening. Everything's fine. We're all under control. The beauty of not editing these things. It's amazing. So let's talk about your ability to stay well and mentally positive about stuff. So how do you take care of yourself, Alex? What do you do? What's your routine?
So I mean, I think for me, if it's not an apparent theme, I use writing a lot. For me, writing has been such a healing way to just heal and to give myself the space to think and experience and put words to how I'm experiencing life and what I'm feeling, and just a way to kind of let go as well. I always describe sharing things publicly as a way of letting go of the stories that, you know, I no longer want to carry in a way. You know, I'm conscious that they make me part of who I am, but I'm also conscious that it's stuff that I don't want to be hauling with me. If not, it's a pretty heavy luggage. And yeah, I would say I've really recently, and this is more lockdown related, gotten into ecstatic dance, which is a type of conscious dancing where you kind of just put, I would say probably not very kind of pop music, but
Okay.
more sort of tribal, I would say, or spiritual type music, and you kind of just go with the flow. And I found that really like a very healing and I like dancing anyway, but this type of dancing, I went to a workshop just before lockdown and really enjoyed it and sort of practice it at home now. So I think dancing for me has worked. I wouldn't say that that's probably for everyone.
Why not try it, right? We're all looking for new things,
exactly.
Right?
I think that for me, you know, I've realized that some mornings I wake up and I feel a little bit off, or, you know, I've had a rough night's sleep, and I find it's a really good way to kind of shake off the energy of whatever I'm feeling. I would also say I kind of meditate a little bit as well. I wouldn't say loads, and I wouldn't say I'm religious with it. But when I do work with kind of group workshops and stuff like that, we always start that way. So that always, I think for me, grounds me and helps me. So those three, I'd say, are kind of the main things in my current life.
Brilliant. Well, you know, and keep doing them. I'm liking this idea of ecstatic dancing. I'd have to be really careful with my very dodgy knee, but I guess I could do it on one leg, right? I don't know. There's probably no rules to it. Amazing. So, you know, the other thing that you said, you up to move during a pandemic, right? Which a lot of people will think, oh my gosh, that's so either brave,
crazy. A lot of people thought that, yes.
What did people think when you did it? What did they say?
They were like, "You're nuts." A lot of brave, a lot of courageous, a lot of crazy. It's funny. I realized something around the period that I chose to move. Actually, I realized it a little bit before, and I realized this in therapy. Is that I kind of explained a little bit about my childhood where I moved to France. My mum had the habit of sending me abroad in summers. So I spent a lot of time in Italy, in Colombia, where my mother's from. And so I moved a lot when I was younger, and I spent a lot of time with people that weren't my family. So either family or family friends. So change for me and uncertainty is my norm. For me, being static or routine is my like discomfort.
Yeah, okay.
So, and for I'm gonna say for normal people, for people generally.
Yeah. What is normal?
Who is normal? For people generally, it's the opposite, you know. Change and uncertainty is very discomforting, and routine and static and stability is comforting. My brain operates in the opposite way. So the idea of moving countries in the midst of a pandemic was literally a breeze. Like, it didn't panic me whatsoever. Whereas I can see why it would to the majority of people. But for me, airports are kind of my second home. Living abroad is something that I'm very accustomed to. Sure. Living in a country I don't speak the language is something I've done before. So it wasn't, I can see how it was perceived, and I got a lot of messages like that. But no, it was, luckily it went really smoothly.
And amazing. And I love the fact that you said, I don't speak the language, and so are you learning rapid German? Are you sort of trying
to everyone here speaks English. I came with the intention of learning German, and now I'm kind of like, I don't know if there's a point. Everyone is speaking to me in German, so it's sort of, I don't know, we'll see.
So how long are you staying in Germany? What's your plan? Is there a longer term plan with this? Stay forever?
That's a good question.
Hop to another city.
So I in May, the end of my flat contract finishes. So depending obviously on what's going on with COVID, there is a high likelihood that I will be going on to a next city.
Wow, there you go. Love it. Work from any country. It's great. Yeah. It's great. The freedom and spirit.
Exactly.
That's incredible. So you know, so that brings us to your plans for the future. You know, talk to us about what you want to do with Authentic Alex and your podcast. I think you're going to launch a podcast at some point around your Trauma to Triumph.
I am.
You want to do more with the newsletter. Of course, you've got some great subscribers already to that. And for anybody that wants to follow you, you know, and what you're doing your work. So what's your plan?
So for me, a lot of what I'm really interested in spending time at the moment is to take people on the same journey that I've been on in terms of writing. Okay. So part of those kind of experiences or writing journeys will be to heal. And other parts of the writing journeys will be to help you grow your presence on LinkedIn. And I'm just really interested in helping people share their hero's journey. It's something that I've realized, you know, for me for the past 5 years is literally what I've been doing on LinkedIn. Yeah. And it's how I've marketed myself and grown my audience. And I think, you know, we all have very interesting and powerful stories. And you know this more than anything with the amount of, you know, guests that you've spoken to, Matt. But I think very often we hide them and we don't share them. And one of my favorite quotes recently by Maya Angelou is and I'm totally going to forget it now that I've said it, is around the, you know, the pain of bearing an untold story. Right. And I think a lot of people sit uncomfortably with these stories that they really wish that one day they could say, or, you know, the discomfort of not being able to find their voice or to be able to show up authentically. And I'm really kind of in a place where I really want to start helping people do that. And my doorbell rings.
More things
Everything's
going on
happening.
There. Oh my gosh, yeah. Move to Berlin, they said. It'll be easy, they said. Yeah, incredible, you know. And actually what's interesting is that, you know, thinking about what you just said, you know, giving people a platform to tell their story is such a critical part, because often, you know, and I know from some of the work that I do in the volunteering side and everything else, that people don't tell their stories, and the first time they might say it is in private or confidence to one person. And it's such a shame that we don't have just that feeling that says, okay. And I'm going to sort of wrap and ask you just to close in a second, if that's all right, Alex, because I know, conscious of time, and so that bloke, whoever's at the door, is probably, you know, wondering where you're going to go. Keep pressing the bell. But I do, you know, huge thank you to you for agreeing to come on this with me. I genuinely love everybody that agrees to come on to this podcast, or this session with me, because I love listening to stories. I really do. And I find your story absolutely compelling, fascinating, inspiring, insightful, and all these wonderful superlatives. I do want to just share with the community that are listening, for those that your title on LinkedIn says Queen of Vulnerability, which I absolutely adore, Gentle Warrior, Kindred Content Spirit, Wisdom Whisperer. Those are the words that I sort of picked out. I think that's just incredible.
They've been given to me.
You know what? Yeah. They're perfect for you. And for anybody that is listening that wants to follow it, please do let them know where they can find that. But do you want to say a few words to close out?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I had to leave with one parting message is, you know, if you haven't shared your story, share your story, and do it authentically. You know, be yourself. Someone out there is waiting to hear that story.
So we will see many more authentic names coming out there, right? So Authentic Alex is already taken for anybody that is interested. If they're called Alex, you'll have to find your longer version of the name. Seriously, thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.
Do appreciate it. As I always say at the end of these sessions, if anybody is struggling, does need extra help or support, please do know there is always somebody there to talk to. In the UK, we have Samaritans. The number's 116 123. Please know that somebody's always available if you do want to share maybe some of your story with somebody in confidence. You don't want to share it publicly at the moment. Of course, Alex and we both want to encourage people to share their stories. Please do know that there are spaces you can do this. By the way, you can contact me. You can become a guest on this podcast if you're really that excited about it and you want to do it. I get lots of people that request to come on, which is fantastic. And I just can't wait to do more. And Alex does a lot of work around this subject, of course, as well. And the doorbell's ringing again. So I think on that, we're probably going to close this call and say thank you so much. And I hope everybody's enjoyed
Lovely speaking to you, Matt.
You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.